Song of Primigenia, Chapter 5, Kin, a Bandit Problem. Quick author's note. From now on, the city known as Crater City in the previous recordings will now be known as Starfall City instead. So anytime you hear Starfall City from the previous recordings, it is Crater City. I have updated the manuscript as well as the web novel sites to change all instances of Crater City into Starfall City. So it'll only be the recordings that still have that name for the time being. So it just didn't match up with my updated naming scheme for my town, so I decided to change it. All right, let's get going. Several hours ago, with a sigh, Ken stepped out into the rain as he headed for the shop where his new armor came from. The wind attempted to bite at him, but he had bundled up in an oilcloth cloak. He'd feel sad, or he'd feel sad when he was out in this weather, but the warmth of his morning with Nami kept the blues at bay. Yeah, I think that does work. So, some droplets hit his hand as he closed the door to the inn, and the chill of the water shocked him. Luckily, it was only a short walk to the shop, but it was so dark and foggy that visibility was low. The shopkeeper had lit a lantern outside the shop, which Ken was thankful for. The light was warm and inviting. He picked up his pace as he neared. He grabbed the handle and pulled the door open, the warmth of a fire within hitting his face. The inside of the shop was bright from the lamps, and there was rugs on the floor. The rugs were woven from cloth instead of the skin rugs others used. The next thing that caught Ken's notice was the openness of the shop floor. No racks dominated the area. Wares were on shelves along the walls instead. As a result, the place seemed much more spacious than the general store on the other side of the bridge. He had to stop and marvel at this for a moment before he could focus on the counter at the back of the store. The maple wood counter held a couple of display cases with some of the more expensive wares. Behind it, there was a selection of bows and quivers, as well as a door leading into the shop owner's home. Above the door was a wooden shield with two swords crossed behind it. He was sure this was the shop's logo. As he began to walk towards the counter, he noticed several shields on one of the shelves with the same emblem. All the shields were wooden, though there were no metal shields. While lost in his reverie, Ken didn't notice someone had come out from the door and was now standing at the counter. He jumped at the sound of the man making a polite cough to get his attention. He turned to find the shopkeeper, who was a tall and muscular man with blazing eyes and a pronounced jaw. He had shaved all his hair off, and the combination was a very striking one. He wore a simple leather jerkin and pants. His belt had a dagger strapped to it. As intimidating as the man looked, there was kindness in his eyes. "I see you admiring the goods. You have good taste, sir," the man said. He was gentle as he spoke. Ken could not help but return the smile with his warm grin and a wave at the goods. "You have good stock here. You get a lot of business?" The man shrugged. "Not a whole lot yet, but one day I hope for that to change. You've made such a nice place. I could see myself spending a lot of time here." "Success!" The man let loose a hearty laugh. "I'm glad to hear that. My name's Jakob, the owner of the shop and the smith as well. Is there anything you need, brother?" Ken took off his cloak and folded it over his arm, revealing his leathers and the sword strapped to his waist. "My name is Ken Hearthstone. A pleasure to meet you, Jakob. I wanted to stop in and thank you for the chain shirt. I also wanted to meet the smith who made such beauty as a matter of professionalism." Jacob's expression grew brighter. "He's son. Well, well, you look nothing like your old man, but the pleasure is all mine." He offered his hand, and Ken didn't hesitate to clasp his wrist in a standard fashion. "We have a few pieces of yours on sale, and your father gave you high praise. I'm very pleased you like the shirt, my friend." As he spoke, he gestured to a shelf on the west wall of the store. Ken approached the shelf and took down a short sword. Sure enough, the hilt was one of Nami's makes, and the blade one of his. Both bore the logo of the Hearthwood Smithy, a fireplace with an open flame. There was a slight imperfection in the blade. It wouldn't affect performance, but still irked Ken. He placed it back and then returned to the counter. "I like this place more and more. I hope you will continue to support our smithy in the future, Jacob." Jacob's voice was grave as he agreed. "Of course. When it comes to metal, armor is my only real talent. I was very pleased when I moved into this place. Alistair and your father approached me. I was very pleased when I moved into this place. Alistair and your father." That should probably be one sentence. Um, I knew this setup was only going to work if I had the support of the locals. I wish I could get goods from the Rootford blacksmith too, but he trailed off and Ken grimaced at his sympathy. "Oh yeah, That family has been close with the owners of the general store for generations, so that would be tough. I can understand that. Why, then, is the man unmarried and childless if the tradition is so important? Ken winced. He had hoped this conversation would not go this way. Well, that's not my story to tell exactly, but if you're going to live here, I suppose it will come out eventually. You didn't hear this from me, if anyone asked. Got it? Jacob covered his heart with his hand. I swear on my mother's family your secret is safe with me. Satisfied, Ken continued. He did have a family once. There was a tornado that raced through this area about 5 years ago. His wife and his two daughters were out picking berries that day when it touched down not far from them. Jacob's face fell into a grimace of horror. That's horrible. Does this area get tornadoes often? Ken shook his head. Not at all. They tend to appear further north in the forest, which makes this even more of a freak occurrence. He came to live with us for a while after it happened. He still doesn't like to talk about it, though. I can understand, but it makes me feel better about the community I moved to. This place seems so much more united than Starfall. Ken felt a rush of excitement at the man's words. Oh, you're from the capital? Can you tell me about it? My partner and I are on our way there to see it for ourselves. Shopowner's face returned to a pleased expression as the topic changed to his home. Sure, but I would like something in return. I've heard you're good with a sword. Mind if we spar for a bit? Ken blinked at the invitation, but found no reason to decline. They stepped out into the main floor, and Jacob handed him a wooden training sword. They took their poses and started dueling. Ken started off the fight with a two-handed strike at the man's leg. He sidestepped the blow and countered with one of his own. The shop owner was fast, but he had nothing on Gammy, so Ken was able to move his body out of the way at the last possible moment. You're good, Ken. Let's see how long you can last. The youth grimaced as the battle continued. Neither of them was able to get the advantage over the other, and so it went back and forth for some time. Jacob finally held up a hand to stop their fighting. All right, that's enough sparring for now. Care to step into the back and have a drink with me? Ken was all too eager to agree and followed the man into the back room. It was cozy, with more of the wooden rugs on the floor. Jacob motioned Ken to a large table dominating the room. He tossed Ken a rag to wipe away the sweat. Ken slid down into a stool with a grateful sigh. His host headed over to the fireplace and poured out two steaming mugs of hot liquid. When Ken held his mug, he noticed it was apple cider. Thanks, he took a sip of the heated drink. The taste made him long for home. You're welcome. It was from a keg your father sent me recently. It's even better with some extra spices added. Something cold would have been better, but I prefer a hot drink after a fight. Oh, may I try it? Ken asked. Jacob took out a small bottle of spices and shook some into the mug. Mixing it in, Ken took another gulp. Wow, this does expand the taste. Wonder why we never had that at home. Never tried that at home. Exactly. We don't have cider often in Starfall City. Our choice of drink is mead. Well, I've had mead before, but it's been a few years. There is a chance I'll like it better now, Ken reasoned. His first experience with mead did not leave a good impression on him. I recommend stopping by the local inn and tavern, the Fallen Star. They have the best mead in the city, and the best part is they take money, barter, or you can exchange chores for the board. The innkeeper's my cousin, so make sure you tell her I sent you, and she'll set you up. Ken felt a surge of gratitude at the offer. While I appreciate the offer, part of this journey is to learn what life will be like as an adventurer. I've got to learn how to use money and how to earn more of it, too. The older man scratched his chin and winked. Well, that will be a useful skill to learn. You will get plenty of practice at Heartsdale, though. That's what I've heard. Ken looked the man in the eye. Still, never can get too much practice. Oh yeah, I understand that sentiment. Anyways, you wanted to know about Starfall City? Yes. What's the city like? Ken asked, his lips curling in anticipation. Well, it's two cities: the upper city and the lower city. I take it you know its origins? Jacob gave Ken an expectant look. Ken nodded. Aye. They built the city where a star fell from the sky and landed near the southern mountains, right? Correct, but that's not the whole story. The fallen star did happen, but the area was sacred to Ragnus long before the city was built. There's been a temple there as long as people have lived in the Dale, and the Quinsonians have always gone there for their ordeals. It was a lake for a long time, and the upper city was built on its banks, but it drained away and left the crater empty. That was about 40 years ago. The people decided to explore the area and found odd ore they were not used to. They decided to build in the crater as well and transform the capital of the Dale into what it is today. I kind of wish I could have seen the lake, Ken admitted as he finished his cider. Sounds lovely. I have seen some paintings of it from a traveling Azurian artist. The lower city is occupied by artisans and other businesses. The the homes are all in the upper city. You can use stairs cut into the earth and laid out with stone to climb up and down. Ken crossed his arms at the thought. Sounds dangerous in the winter or a bad storm. Jacob let out a hearty chuckle. Aye, it is. But we all helped lay out down sawdust on the steps before the winter to help keep the path from freezing over. We only need to worry about it during freezing rain. The city is not as communal, but everyone does pitch in and with the important things. But be aware, some of the older families are a little more set in their ways, though I need not tell you that, after all, you're a Hearthstone. Ken steepled his fingers and pressed his forehead to them as he took a moment to marshal his thoughts. I did need to know that. My father chose to estrange his parents, same with my partner's father. We have never met our grandparents. Not looking forward to that meeting, if I'm being honest. Because your partner being a forge would, right? Jacob cocked an eyebrow. It shocked me when I found out Heath and Alistair were the runaway boys from those feuding families. I wish I could tell you that it's going to be all right. But your families have a long history of disliking each other. Your family had offered me the hand of their second granddaughter, Arnborg, as my wife. I declined because I didn't want to get caught up in the feud. Jacob rubbed his temples as if clearing out bad memories. No offense to you or your father, but I don't want to take a side in that argument. I could tell Arneborg also was not agreeable to the idea of the match either. I did try not to offer insult, but I'm sure your grandmother took offense anyway. That was part of the reason I left and came here, where I'm not considered a threat or an easy target. Heat prickled at the corner of his eyes as the man's words. Why did his family have to be so horrible? The more he learned about his blood kin, the more he did not want anything to do with them. He wanted to grab Nami and go home, back to their private clearing together, as far from the dumb feud as possible. He forced himself to dispel these thoughts. He had made a promise to his love, and he would keep it. I'm sorry, Jacob, Ken said. There's no excuse for the way my kin acted towards you. It sounds like a reasonable way to handle things. I appreciate you saying that. Your father said the same. Jacob refilled their mugs again. This is not either of your faults, so no need to apologize. When you do arrive, I do recommend speaking to your aunt, Honora, first. She tried to help soothe the anger of your grandmother at my refusal, so she might be a more reasonable person. Thank you. Ken felt a bit of the weight lift from his heart as his expression lightened. I will do that, my friend. Make sure you do. Now, have you ever used a shield before? Jacob changed topics. I have seen you use the sword in one or both hands, so you prefer to change up your grip. You could use a shield for some extra defense when needed. Ken looked embarrassed as he responded. I've never used a shield before, if I'm being honest. I tried out a few passes before holding one Nami made, but my teacher didn't use one either. Jacob walked back into the main room and he followed. He took down a shield with the emblem of the white dove, the lady, and passed it to him. Here, let me correct that. You will not master the art in one day, but I can show you the basics so you can get started at least. I'd like for you to survive to come back to the shop again, after all. The shaven man tried to give a serious look, but then burst into laughter, which Ken joined in on. All right, all right. In that case, I promise that if I become an adventurer, I will spend my first coin I earn here as thanks for the lesson. Oh, that's what I like to hear. The older man was triumphant, before turning grave once more. But this could save your life, so let's get serious. Ken had thought Jacob was a good swordsman before, but that was nothing compared to him with a shield and sword. He tried to copy the moves as best he could, but Jacob disarmed him so many times during the next hour. He was not sure if everything had sunk in. He was able to block and push back one blow in three. All right, that's enough for now, Jacob finally called. You got the point. Keep practicing those basics, and on your way back from Starfall City, we can do a refresher. Thanks, Jacob. Ken reached out and the two of them clasped wrists. As they let go, the door of the shop burst open. Ken whirled and found two men standing in the doorway, wrapped in cloaks. The door was hanging on one hinge, broken from the violent kick that had opened it. Excuse me, Jacob's voice dripped with outrage. There was a perfect handle on that door. The two men stepped in, rain pooling on the floor from their cloaks. They pushed back their hoods to reveal long and unkempt hair, their faces shaggy with beards. Both had brown eyes, not the glowing eyes that Ken was used to. Both pulled out curved swords. Ones that he had learned were called scimitars. Both swords were in terrible shape, having suffered some abuse. Ken felt his heart break for the two weapons, but cast those thoughts aside. These men were not here for repairs. Nice place you got here, the man on the left said. He was missing a front tooth, and his hair was black. His nose looked like someone had broken it with a hammer. We'll be commandeering your weapons, armor, and other goods. You'll load them onto our wagon waiting outside, or we'll slit both of your throats. His fear confirmed, Ken felt as if cold rainwater ran down his body. He had never faced men threatening to kill him before, and he could feel the ice leaking into his very blood. Then a hand grabbed his arm, grounding him. He looked over and saw the serious look Jacob was giving him. Ken felt the ice melt and clarity return. There was no judgment or disappointment in Jacob's eyes at the momentary freeze. He only saw support and kindness. Ken gulped down his fear and cleared his mind. Yeah? Ken asked with a scowl, drawing the sword from his hip. With those blades? The sight of the poor condition of the blades gave him confidence. Jacob must have picked up on Ken's line of thought as he grabbed an axe from behind the counter, taking up his shield again. Aye, what have you boys been doing with those blades? Cutting rocks? The man on the right had a scar over one eye, and his hair was blonde. He looked a lot less beat up than his partner, but his cheeks were gaunt. Of course, with these blades. We've killed plenty of people with them. We work for Bjorn, the bandit king. Denying him will result in us destroying this tiny village. I have a better idea, Jacob declared as he stepped even with Ken. We take you hostage and turn you over to the doves. The men blanched, but they steeled their nerves with snarls and charged at Ken and Jacob. Ken moved to the man on the left, leaving his new friend to deal with the one on the right. He gripped his sword in his right hand and held it loose in mid-height, while his foe raised his blade high. The bandit jumped forward at Ken, but to his eyes, the man was moving so slowly it was almost comical. Ken brought his blade around and blocked the incoming slash with a practiced twist of his wrist. The recoil, the 4-4 swing, caused the bandit's guard to open. Ken aimed the sword at Toothless' torso, trying to make the man block. The bandit obliged, and the two swords clashed again. Ken snapped his free hand onto the hilt and pushed as hard as he could on his foe's weapon. There was a terrible cracking sound. The brigand looked down in disbelief at the remains of the sword in his hands, the end stabbing into the rug below. There was another snap to the right, but Ken did not look over that way yet, where Scar had been fighting Jacob. Toothless might still be a threat. What the darkness is this? The men both wailed as they stepped back and towards the door. Ken kept advancing, his lips twisted in a confident smirk. We told you, those blades were in terrible shape. You should have listened. The bandits dropped their broken swords and turned, rushing out into the rain. Ken began to run after them, the minor victory elating him, but he felt Jacob grab his shoulder. Wait, we need to go warn Ingrid Applebeer and alert the men in town who know how to fight. There could be more of them at the cart, and we could be rushing into an ambush. Ken, who felt his blood was on fire, paused at the words of wisdom. You're right. Sorry, Jacob. Let's go and alert the town first. That's the most important thing right now. Ken grabbed his cloak and donned it. When ready, he saw Jacob had also put on a cloak, and they both headed off into the rain. They had searched for hours for the bandits. Ken asked Nami to wait at the house and keep Ingrid and her siblings safe in case the bandits tried to attack them. She hadn't liked it, but she agreed. They had followed the trail of the bandits to where a wagon had been waiting, but there was no further trace of them. A strange dark stone was sitting on the ground near where the wagon sat. They had almost missed it until Jacob had tripped over it. Ken rushed over to check on the fallen man to find the stone he had tripped on. What in the shadows did I trip on? Jacob asked as he rubbed his leg. The offending stone shattered into pieces from the impact. As the youth watched, it began to lose its color and soon was completely white. Some weird stone. You think the bandits left it here? Must have, though I can't think why they would bother. They returned to the others with as much of the crystal as they could gather. Gear Applebeer called the hunt off and invited everyone back to the Applebeer house. Nami had grabbed Ken in a big hug when they came back and took him off to fuss over his soaking clothes. Jacob gave him a wink that he was not sure of the meaning of, but he decided to ignore it as Nami dried his hair with a towel. So, no sign at all? She asked as she removed the towel. Well, we can see they got into the road, but we can't hope to keep up with a cart. If they ride fast, they will be in Hartsdale in 3 days. We did find an odd crystal they left behind, but it got broken during the search. Nami pursed her lips. Well, while I wish I'd gone with you, I would not have been able to get a shot off in this rain. Also, you could get in a fight at a weapons store. She smacked Ken on the head. A gentle tap, but he got the point. But I'm proud of you. That was your first real fight, and you did not and you not only came out unscathed, but broke their weapon as well. Ken tried to pull Nami in closer, but she resisted her wet partner's cuddles, pushing him back. Ken pouted in defeat and settled for having her nearby. Yeah, though I likely would have knocked him out if the fight had continued. I wish we had gotten some more information on this Bajorn guy. The fact that he calls himself something as gaudy as the Bandit King is worrying for sure. Nami's expression softened at the obvious stress in his voice. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I have a feeling this will not be the last time we hear about him. Ken sighed as he agreed. You're right. We will need to be careful on the road to Hartsdale. Since there aren't inns every day along the way, we need to take turns standing watch. Aw, Nami pouted again. Ken nudged her knee with his own and gave her a knowing wink. Until we get to town, anyway. We don't have to worry about it at the inn. Plus, we can make up for lost time. I'll hold you to that. Nami leaned in and kissed his cheek. Their little bubble broke as footsteps came over, and Ken jumped away from Nami even as she did the same from him. Sorry to interrupt, lovebirds, Ingrid smirked at the couple, but I have a favor to ask of you both since you're leaving in the morning. Well, I was going to ask you about this anyway, Nami, but the crisis started. Nami nodded and took the other girl's hands. It shocked him to see her make such a friendly gesture to another girl. Seeing them together, though, Ken realized her making a new friend was quite pleasant. Of course, Ingrid. It would be our pleasure to help you. Ingrid clasped Nami's hands in return. Thank you, Nami. I have a family living in Crimson Lake Village. You need to take the turn in the road 2 days from here and head north for a day. My Aunt Tove and her family are there, and with the bandits coming into town today, I'm worried about them. I know it'll be a little out of your way, but I will prepare a letter for you to give to Tove as an introduction. She will see to your needs while you're in the village. Also, I'll have packs with rations waiting for you at the inn in the morning as thanks for your help today. Ken rose from the seat he was on and stood beside Nami. Thank you, Ingrid. We appreciate that. Be on your guard here. The bandits did threaten to wipe the town off the map. Jakob scoffed. Yeah, that won't happen. I sent a runner to Appleshade. The dove there should be on her way here by morning. We'll be fine. Ken exchanged a knowing glance with Nami. He pitied any bandit that dared to think they could go toe to toe with Gammy. Ken turned as something caught his eye. He smiled. He noticed both Ingrid and Jacob trying to sneak peeks at each other, all casual like. Ken was not an expert in the ways of the heart, but he saw Nami cooing in silence as she took note. If Nami approved, he liked their chances. The couple finally made their excuses and returned to the inn exhausted. Marcia took one look at them, canceled their dinner plans, and sent the couple to their room so they could rest. Nami made Ken take a hot soak in a big iron tub before she would allow him into the bed beside her. They cuddled but after the excitement of the day, both were soon sleeping. And that is the end of chapter 5 of Song of Primigenia, book 1. So I hope you enjoyed that. We are getting to the midpoint of the book and towards the major plot beat of the story with the bandits. So I do hope you join me next week. Chapter 6 is a little bit of a break before we get into the next big plot beat. So I hope you'll join me for that. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Goodbye.